Christopher Nolan is a cinematic visionary who has developed a unique style in the film world that has set him atop Hollywood's Mount Rushmore. Through visual motifs, specific color palettes, and limited use of special effects, Nolan tells his stories in a way that perfectly enraptures the audience's attention while sticking to his original vision. But in the film industry, it's hard to come by anything that is truly original. Nolan acknowledges this and pays tribute to his predecessors that paved the way for non-linear storytelling through film. Christopher Nolan's use of color, mise-en-scene, and an experimental narrative draws inspiration from the likes of Stanley Kubrick and Nicholas Roeg. One of Christopher Nolan's most critically acclaimed films, Inception, tells the story of a man looking for redemption, and through his heist-like odyssey, he attains this redemption. At least that's what we as viewers are meant to believe, but you can never be certain in a Nolan film. Inception follows the route of an unreliable narrator. As the film develops, we come to be less certain that anything is real. Nolan accomplishes this by taking us inside the film, and rather than being a spectator, Nolan wants us to be along for the ride. Nolan gives credit to another English director for his experimental strategy of narrative in an interview from early on in his career. Nolan says, "I grew up with narrative experimentalism in many mediums, especially novels and in literature. Filmmakers should be able to experiment with narrative without alienating the audience and without creating something that is impenetrable, something that is highly textured. I was looking particularly at what Nicholas Roeg was doing in the 1970s, and with his work there is a kind of abstractation that for wider audiences could have been unsatisfying. I actually see myself as a very mainstream filmmaker, albeit one that uses some of those narrative freedoms that Roeg and his kind were pushing for, but applying them to a more concrete narrative." One of Roeg's most popular films from the 1970s is the Australian film Walkabout, featuring siblings seemingly lost in the Australian outback. Roeg chose to film this movie on site in the Australian outback, choosing to film mainly in Alice Springs. This raw, on-site landscape made way for a beautifully shot film. The natural setting makes the viewers feel as if they are really following the duo as they make their way across the outback. Christopher Nolan follows this style of filmmaking closely, as he prefers to shoot in natural settings over studio work whenever possible. This choice makes production much more complicated, but enables the viewer to feel even more immersed in the story as the natural colors provide the audience with an undertone of realism. Christopher Nolan has always believed in high-quality productions that efficiently capture the audience's attention. This is achieved in a majority of his films through a specific choice of color. Nolan chooses one signature color at the beginning of his films, and he sticks to that palette throughout the film. Nolan does this in order to direct the audience's attention on the subjects of the film, rather than be distracted. Nolan's color palettes have been influenced by his red-green color blindness, which has led to his muted colors that beautifully support his films. One of the most exhilarating scenes from Inception is the fight scene from the hotel. Arthur can be seen fighting off Fisher's subconscious as the rest of the team delves deeper into the dream worlds. This zero-gravity effect was not accomplished through visual effects as one would think, but instead a rotating set that allowed Joseph Gordon-Levitt to traverse the walls of the hotel. Remind you of any other notable scene from another visionary director? Stanley Kubrick accomplished this very same effect in the scene from 2001, A Space Odyssey. Nolan has claimed to draw heavy inspiration from Kubrick and what he was able to accomplish with the lack of computer-generated effects. Nolan actually chooses to limit the amount of computer-generated imagery for special effects in his films. Nolan rather uses practical effects as often as possible and falls on CGI only when he has to. For instance, his films Inception, Batman Begins, and Interstellar featured 500, 620, and 850 visual effects shots, respectively, which is considered minor when compared with contemporary visual effects blockbusters, which may have upwards of 1,500 to 2,000 VFX shots. Some may be familiar with the Russian stacking dolls toy. The dolls are stacked inside each other, and as you open up the dolls, you are greeted with another smaller one. This is called a recursion, and Christopher Nolan is known to have used these recursions throughout his films. Examples of recursions can be drawn back to another iconic Kubrick film. This scene from the hotel shows the twin girls at the end of the hallway. The way in which the scene was shot portrays the hallway as going on forever. Examples from Nolan's films includes the infinity mirror scene from Inception, the fourth dimensional space from Interstellar that Cooper falls in, the 360-degree world Ariadne creates, the drawing at the hotel of how dreams work, the 360-degree space shuttle from Interstellar, the infinity staircase that Arthur and Ariadne use. Even going back to his first production ever, Doodlebug, portraying a man intent on killing the creature in his apartment until realizing he's chasing a smaller version of himself. This theme is called mise en abîme, and the obvious use of it in Inception is the dreams within a dream concept. The use of mise en abîme actually makes the audience feel a sense of claustrophobia, like they are trapped. But Nolan successfully finishes this rise and fall of action by consistently executing the theme of breaking the recursions he creates. Examples include Ariadne breaking the mirror, Cooper escaping the 4D space, the kick waking everyone up out of their dream, Dr. Brand starting her new civilization, Cobb drawing through the dream explanation, the killing of the Doodlebug, and the man being kicked off the stairs in Inception. Nolan is known for adventuring outside of the realm of cinema to draw inspiration for his films. Nolan claims in his interview with Tate from 2013 that he draws heavy inspiration from 20th century artist Francis Bacon. Bacon's paintings consist of uncanny expressions of various humanoid depictions and dark backgrounds. Nolan claims that he aims to recreate this feel in his films. Nolan wants his films to suggest that there's more than just what he's focusing on in the scenes. His dark backgrounds are meant to subtly call attention to the rest of Nolan's world and cause the audience to wonder what could be back there. Nolan also uses this idea of distortion through the motif of memory distortion, found in films such as Memento and Tenet. Another artist Nolan pulls inspiration from is M.C. Escher. Themes from his art are found in various Nolan films. Christopher Nolan has created a legacy for himself in only 12 films that few have yet to produce. Nolan's attention to detail in aspects such as color, mise-en-scène, and his experimental narrative hold true in every one of his movies, and his pull of inspiration from earlier directors like Kubrick and Rogue properly influenced his cinematic style. Nolan's narrative decisions in Inception pose various further questions, like do Cobb, Arthur, Saito, and Fisher represent the roles of cinematic production, and is Cobb actually in reality at the end of the film? But as Nolan says, Cobb doesn't care. And that is the point.